The India-China border dispute is a serious issue. In the Himalayas, a cold and vast border stretches for thousands of miles. The line of actual control, LAC, is a notional demarcation line that separates Indian-controlled territory from Chinese-controlled territory in the Sino-Indian border dispute. PPs within the LAC and the patrol routes that join them are known as limits of patrolling. It is a place of great beauty, but also very important strategically. The LAC is more than just a line on a map. It shows the complex history and uneasy relationship between India and China. Recent tensions at this border have worried the world, reminding us how fragile peace can be. For decades, the India-China border dispute has been a problem, sometimes leading to conflict. The history of colonialism, unresolved territorial claims and mistrust have fueled this dispute. The stakes are high for both countries. The outcome of this dispute affects not only India and China, but the entire region and beyond. The Himalayas, once seen as an impossible barrier, now see a large military presence. Both India and China are building up their positions, sending troops and developing infrastructure along the LAC. This military build-up is worrying, raising the risk of conflict between the world's two most populous nations. i.e., a century of border disputes. The India-China border dispute started during the colonial era. The British drew borders that were unclear and often disputed. When India became independent in 1947, it inherited these border issues with China. The 1962 war between India and China worsened relations. India lost the war and China took control of Aksai Chin, an important area. Since then, both countries have tried to negotiate, but no lasting solution has been found. There are many tense areas along the LAC. The Galwan Valley, Depsang Plains and Pangong TSO Lake are some of these disputed areas. Both sides blame each other for crossing the border and breaking agreements. Without a clear border, even small incidents can become big problems. The lack of communication and trust makes the situation worse. The Galwan Valley clash, a turning point. The year 2020 saw a big rise in tensions in the India-China border dispute. In June, a violent clash happened between Indian and Chinese troops in the Galwan Valley, causing casualties on both sides. This was the first time in decades that the border dispute led to deaths, shocking both countries and the world. The Galwan Valley clash was a clear sign that the border dispute could get out of control. It broke the fragile peace that had lasted for decades, pushing India and China into a new phase of mistrust and hostility. After the Galwan clash, both India and China increased their military presence along the LAC. Troops, tanks, artillery and fighter jets were deployed in large numbers, turning the once peaceful Himalayan region into a potential battleground. The international community watched with growing concern, urging both sides to exercise restraint and de-escalate the situation. The possibility of a conflict between the world's two most populous nations, both nuclear-armed, was a sobering reminder of the fragility of global peace. Seeking resolution, disengagement, and dialogue. After the Galwan Valley clash, India and China started talks to reduce border tensions. These talks, held at different levels, aimed to create ways for troops to pull back and build trust. Both sides agreed to pull back troops from some tense areas along the LAC. This included moving troops back, taking down temporary structures, and setting up buffer zones to avoid clashes. However, the pullback has been slow and only partial, with some areas still in dispute. While these agreements have reduced tensions a bit, a lasting solution is still out of reach. Both India and China say they want a peaceful solution through talks, but progress is slow and trust is low. Finding a peaceful solution to the India-China border dispute is very challenging. Both sides have become more firm in their positions, making it hard to compromise. The growing rivalry between India and China, driven by global politics, makes the talks even harder. Number 1. India's stance. Bilateralism over mediation. India thinks the border issue with China should be solved directly between the two countries. New Delhi doesn't want any other country to get involved, saying it can handle the issue on its own. India thinks that bringing in other countries would make things more complicated and turn it into a global issue. New Delhi believes that talking directly with China with respect for each other is the best way to solve the problem. India has always said no to offers of help from other countries, including the United States. New Delhi says it has the right ways to talk with Beijing and solve the border issue. India's strong belief in bilateral talks shows its confidence in solving the dispute through direct discussions. New Delhi thinks that a deal agreed by both sides is the only way to solve the long-standing issue. Number 2, regional stability at risk, the shadow of conflict. The ongoing border dispute between India and China has created a lot of tension in the region. Both countries are powerful and have nuclear weapons. Their fight over the border makes people in South Asia worried. Both sides are increasing their military presence along the border, which could lead to mistakes and a bigger conflict. There is a risk that a small incident could turn into a larger conflict. The border dispute has hurt the trust and relationship between India and China. This has also affected trade and cooperation in the region. The unresolved border issue is a constant reminder of the fragile peace and the risk of conflict. It weakens regional stability and makes it harder to tackle common problems like terrorism, climate change, and economic growth. Number 3, global power dynamics, the US factor. The India-China border dispute is not just a local issue, it affects global power dynamics. The United States, a global superpower with interests in the Indo-Pacific region, adds more complexity to the situation. The US has been closely watching the India-China border developments and is concerned about China's assertive actions. Washington sees India as a key partner in its Indo-Pacific strategy to counter China's influence. The US has given India military and diplomatic support, strengthening their ties. This has led to closer cooperation between India, the US, Japan, and Australia, forming the Quad, which counters China's rise. China views the growing US-India partnership with suspicion, seeing it as an attempt to contain its rise. Beijing has warned against external interference in the border dispute, accusing the US of increasing tensions. Number 4, economic implications, a delicate balance. The India-China border dispute has affected the economies of both countries and the region. China is India's biggest trading partner, but the border tensions have hurt their trade relationship. India is trying to rely less on Chinese imports by boosting local manufacturing and finding other sources. This has led to more diverse supply chains, with India aiming to reduce its trade deficit with China. The border tensions have also affected Chinese investments in India. New Delhi is now more careful about Chinese investments, especially in sensitive areas, due to security concerns. This has caused delays and cancellations of projects, affecting economic cooperation. The economic effects of the border dispute go beyond just trade and investment between the two countries. The tensions have created uncertainty in the region, affecting investor confidence and slowing down regional economic integration. Number 5, the path forward towards a fragile peace. The India-China border dispute is one of the toughest issues today. Solving it will need ongoing talks, compromise, and a focus on peace. Moving forward means keeping the dialogue open, building trust, and tackling the root causes of the conflict. Both sides must show restraint, avoid provocations, and aim for de-escalation. The world community should support dialogue and peaceful solutions. Promoting regional stability, cooperation, and economic growth can help resolve the dispute. The India-China border issue is complex with no easy answers, but peace must be the main goal. The stakes are high for both countries, the region, and the world. Only through dialogue, diplomacy, and a shared commitment to peace can we hope to resolve this long-standing dispute and build a more stable and prosperous future.